These are the matters we'll be looking at today on the program. Don't forget we had three elections on just over the weekend, Bayelsa and Kogi states joining us to look at the matters and so many other things leading up to that particular election and the fallout of the election. Is a legal practitioner and a lecturer of law, Bawala Daniel. He joins us from Abuja. Good morning and thanks for joining us. I recall we had looked at this matter when it first broke, when it was declared inconclusive, and now we're getting to see a whole lot happening, especially in Kogi State. Don't forget that Mr. Faleke is still insisting, kicking that, look, well, all is not well with that particular election. Tell us your own reading from this now, that we already have a governor-elect in Kogi State. Some are already saying that since Mr. Faleke is saying that he's not his running mate, what does this mean in the eye of the law? Let's start from that particular angle.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. As the election in Kogi is concerned, Mr. Bello, the winner. However, and the contention of James Faleke may not be tenable in law because the requirement of the law is if he wanted to withdraw, he ought to have written expressly stating his withdrawal pursuant to the provisions of the Electoral Act. Only when that has happened, he can consider himself as completely out of the race or out of the APC government. But as it stands, he's part of the government. My concern is generally what has transpired at the Federal High Court and the Election Tribunal, because as far as I'm concerned, what happened at the Federal High Court on Friday is a foretaste of what we're going to see consequently, either at the Court of Appeal, when parties go on appeal, either PDP go on appeal, or even Faleke go on appeal, and then at the Elections Tribunal, when you see Faleke and then PDP fighting it all out. It's hydra-headed. It has multiple heads. I call it octopus. That's the situation in a Kogi.
You know, there was this palpable fear on that day, talking about Friday. Loads and loads of people, political watchers, that were thinking that perhaps the elections wasn't going to hold. What did you perceive before the outcome of that particular ruling?
Had the Federal High Court not declined jurisdiction, then definitely the election would have been affected. And I think that the Federal High Court declined jurisdiction, probably in the mind of the court applied the doctrine of convenience to say we are not going to say anything about this, let them go to the polls, and then whatever happened afterwards will be determined by the Election Tribunal. But the court declined jurisdiction because the court said the matters are within the confines of election petition and election petition tribunal. Some of us hold the view that it is not altogether in our submission. It's not altogether correct. However, is the law that because if you look at the provision of the Electoral Act, there are parts of, for example, the issue relating to pre-election. We have had in the rulings of courts across Nigeria, like in Taraba, you had it in Bayelsa, and a couple of places where it says it is both pre-election and post-election. But the Federal High Court basically declined jurisdiction so that the election will go on. And thankfully that happened.
That's what some will call a very clever way of staying off trouble. But looking at a big moment now, which we're still looking at, now we have a governor-elect and Mr. Faleke is still kicking. Don't forget that the PDP is still there and all of this matters is still pending. What do you make? Looking at the Electoral Act, first, some would say for the APC, not moving the running mate, that's Mr. Faleke, who is still on that particular line of argument, saying that he should have been the one to be the governorship candidate of his party, and the party bringing up the governor-elect, Mr. Yahaya Bello. What do you think that the provisions of the law should have provided the political party, which is the APC, in getting itself out of that particular logjam?
I personally feel, too, that Mr. James Faleke ought to be the person to emerge as the governor, because we all are witnesses to the fact that at the time the election was declared inconclusive, there was a clear lead by APC, and everybody could reach a conclusion that APC at that stage had won. And if APC had won at that time, then Faleke would have been rightfully, pursuant to the provision of the Electoral Act as well as the Constitution, to take over from there. But that hasn't happened. Now, if you look at even what happened at the Federal High Court, the PDP and WADA approached the court and asked for the interpretation of section 30, 31, 32, 34, 36, 85, 87 of the Electoral Act and the constitutional provision of section 178, 79, 80, and 81. And that if the court interpret this together, the court will arrive at the conclusion that two of them were in the race and one died. And so at that point, he was the highest, he was the person who scored the highest votes. Now, on the part of Faleke at the APC level, now the question is, will he sustain his action that the court declined jurisdiction in the Federal High Court? Will he continue with it at the Court of Appeal? Will he appeal against the decision of the Federal High Court declining jurisdiction? Or because he's completely shut out as far as the Election Petition Tribunal is concerned, because at this point, he's no longer going to be a party at the tribunal. So while he remains the deputy governor, is he going to appeal against that decision? Will he approbate or reprobate? Is one issue that APC will have to decide on that.
Sorry, Nyota. If you look at this critically now, because that's one issue that the APC, as you rightly said, but basically there are so many other issues emanating out of this whole logjam. First is the issue that you raised, is saying so far, as Mr. Faleke has not written, because if we look back to the Electoral Act, section 35 here, talking about withdrawal of candidate, is saying a candidate may withdraw his candidature by notice in writing, signed by him, delivered by himself to the political party that nominated him for the election and the political party that convey such withdrawal to the commission, and which shall only be allowed not later than 45 days to the election. So in this case, if he hasn't written to his political party, that is in writing, going by the provision of the Electoral Act 35, section 35 here, so it then means he's still on the ballot.
Yes, if he has not written that before the election, that he remains deputy governor elect in contest.
And if he's saying, well, he has a case with his party on this particular one, what comes to mind again is the supremacy of candidates and that of the party. If we go back to the Rotimi Omeha matter then, does this fly when we try to bring the precedent from that particular ruling?
Well, a lot of references have been made over the last few weeks about the decision in Rotimi and Amechi, but without people without averting their minds to the fact that the Supreme Court in several other cases have distinguished Amechi and INEC. Now, this idea of the party is supreme, while it is there, the law also recognizes the fact that once the party nominates a candidate, then that candidate stands as the legal person as far as the election is concerned. The party cannot control that person at that stage. The platform is the party, but the law recognizes the candidate. And that is why, even when winner is announced as an election, it is the name of the candidate and not the party. Now, whatever that is happening, at the party level, between James Faleke and the governor-elect as he stands, are what I consider as party affairs. The only time it will have the effect of law is where an action taken by APC or James Faleke contravenes either the provisions of the Constitution or the Electoral Act. So he can continue to contest, and as a matter of fact, if he files an appeal and the Court of Appeal sitting, deciding to invoke the provision of Section 15 of the Court of Appeal Act to look at the matter that the Federal High Court ought to have looked into when the Federal High Court declared jurisdiction. If the Court of Appeal sat or sit and then consider the matter and arrive at the conclusion that the issue is a joint ticket, then I'm afraid that in the circumstance, the Court of Appeal may give the mandate to James Faleke.